Pączki Day is a magical day where people all around the world celebrate pączki, a miraculous Polish pastry that is like a donut but softer, richer, and so much better. Speaking of how fatty and rich they are, here's an easy way to remember how to pronounce it because eating these is your key to punch. Pączki. And since it's an entire day devoted to celebrating this delicious dessert, I'm going to show you how to make 3 different kinds of pączki that all start with the same dough. Traditional glazed pączki filled with a delicious homemade plum butter, powdered sugar dusted pączki with a creamy custard filling, and cinnamon sugar pączki with a cozy apple pie filling. As always, the recipe is in the description below, so let's get started. To make the dough, to the bowl of a stand mixer add lukewarm milk, melted unsalted butter, 1 whole egg and 3 yolks, vanilla extract, granulated sugar, salt, all-purpose flour, instant yeast, and lemon zest. Attach the dough hook and mix on low speed for a minute or so just until everything is combined. Then crank the speed up to medium-high and knead for another 6 to 8 minutes. This is a very sticky dough. There will come a point where you're going to think there's not enough flour and you'll be tempted to add more. Resist the temptation. Just keep kneading and trust me, eventually enough gluten will develop to bring it all together. Once the dough comes together and cleans the sides of the mixer bowl, transfer it to a lightly oiled bowl, cover it with some plastic wrap, and leave in a warm place until roughly doubled in size, about 45 minutes to an hour. Then punch the dough down, put the plastic wrap back on, and refrigerate for at least 2 hours and up to 8. Roll the dough out on a lightly floured surface until it's about a ½ inch thick. I rolled mine out a little thinner than I should have, so definitely do as I say and not as I do. Use a cookie cutter or a drinking glass to cut rounds that are about 2 to 3 inches in diameter. Gather up the scraps and cover them in plastic wrap. You can roll and cut them out again after it's had at least 15 minutes to rest. Transfer the rounds to a greased or parchment-lined baking sheet, cover in plastic, and let rise until doubled again, about 45 minutes more. While the rounds are rising, heat 3 inches of oil in a Dutch oven or deep fryer to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Once they've doubled in size, very carefully drop a few pączki into the hot oil. Fry until deep golden brown on one side, about 2 to 3 minutes, then flip and fry the other side for another 2 to 3 minutes. Drain on a towel-lined baking sheet. Let's start with some traditional pączki, for which we'll need some plum butter. You could use store-bought, but it's not always easy to find and homemade is always better. Wash, cut, and pit a couple pounds of fresh plums. Cook them over medium heat while stirring until they begin to soften. Toss in some sugar, about ½ a cup per pound of plums, but just sweeten to taste, and continue cooking and stirring until the plums get very soft. Blend until almost completely smooth and turn the heat down to very low. Continue cooking, stirring every 15 minutes or so until it gets as thick as this. Chill in the fridge and it'll thicken to the perfect pączki filling consistency. While the plum butter is chilling, we'll make the glaze, starting by using the juice from the lemon we zested to make the dough. To that, add enough powdered sugar until a somewhat thin glaze is achieved. Just add a bit at a time, whisk, check the consistency, and keep going until it's to your liking. If you go too far, you can thin it out with a bit more lemon juice, water, or milk. When you're ready to fill your pączki, transfer your plum butter into a piping bag fitted with a round tip, cut a hole into the side of one pączek, fill it with some plum butter, dip one side into the glaze, let the excess drip off, and set aside. Moving on to the custard pączki, we'll begin by whisking together some cornstarch and sugar before whisking them into the egg yolks until completely smooth. Set that aside while we heat up the milk until just barely simmering, at which point we'll awkwardly pour a little bit into the bowl we just now realized is a little too small for the task, but decide to press on nevertheless until about half of the hot milk has been slowly whisked into the yolks. Pour the yolk and milk mixture back into the pot and cook slowly over medium-low heat while stirring constantly until it all of a sudden thickens. At this point, turn the heat off and keep whisking until completely smooth before adding a splash of vanilla extract or a bloop of vanilla bean paste. Yes, bloop is the correct unit of measurement for a vanilla bean paste. Transfer to a clean bowl, press plastic wrap directly on the surface to prevent a skin from forming, and refrigerate until completely cool. We're just going to dust these with a little powdered sugar. Okay, a lot. So get a small strainer ready in a bowl with some powdered sugar in it. Once the custard is ready to go, give it a quick stir with a rubber spatula to soften it up before transferring it to a piping bag as before. Cut a slit into the side of a pączek, fill it with custard, and dust with an absurd amount of powdered sugar. Done and dusted. Moving on. The apple pie pączki also start with cornstarch whisked into granulated sugar. It's a great way to break cornstarch up without having to sift it. Then dump some very finely diced apples into a pot, toss in the sugar and cornstarch mixture, and add some cinnamon to taste, about 2 teaspoons. Add the applesauce, then cook over medium heat while stirring constantly until the apples have softened and the mixture has thickened, about 5 to 7 minutes. Refrigerate until completely cool before transferring to a piping bag, this time fitted with a large enough round tip to make sure the apple bits can pass through, and set aside. Cover both sides of the donut in some cinnamon sugar, which is just half a cup of granulated sugar with about a teaspoon of cinnamon. And by now you know the drill. Cut a hole, fill, and repeat. And there you have it. Pączki done 3 entirely different and yet completely delicious ways. If you want to try out another delicious handheld treat, you should check out my mini pavlovas video next. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. See you next time.